The question that I have is pretty simple. There was a bill on the floor of or the bill that came up for vote that required health insurers to provide insurance coverage for persons under the age of 19 without pre-existing conditions, exclusions, and without a health screening examination. Now, my opponent takes a considerable amount of money from the insurance industry, and I just want to make sure that he had a specifically different reason for voting against that bill. He was one of only 2 people that voted against this bill that basically provided insurance or made sure that they had kids had access to insurance, even if they had a pre-existing condition. So I would like, my first question, or my only question, I guess, is to ask him to explain why he thought that kids in this community didn't deserve health care.
Well, thank you, Jay. That's an excellent question. I'm thinking, because I'm not recalling the bill which you're speaking of, so possibly you could have been more specific about that bill and what was entailed in it, but I'll try my best the way you framed the question to answer it directly. Ladies and gentlemen, the answer to, well, let's just go straight to the point. Right now, our president has established an act that was very difficult for him to get through Congress. And it's called, I can't remember the entire title, I got it written down here somewhere, but the Affordable Care Act. Okay. That Affordable Care Act it does not help us make our care more affordable. What it does is it helps to make insurance more available to more people. Okay? And it would be a government-run program. Personally, to me, as a Republican, another government-run program is not what this nation needs. Okay? I gave you the same example that I gave previously. Compare the U.S. Postal Service to UPS, DHL, and Federal Express. Which company is running more efficiently? The one run by the government or the one that's run by private sector? Okay, so I think the best answer for health care for all of the citizens in the United States of America, including those in Washington State, is private insurance companies, not government-run insurance. And if you tell a private insurance company, you must run by these rules and only these rules. When government then mandates to private insurance, this is the only way you can operate in Washington State. You just stifle and you just exclude many of those insurance companies that would want to come to Washington State and offer affordable health care to the citizens. So I may have voted against the particular bill that he's talking about, simply because when you say that insurance company, you must insure this person even when they have a pre-existing condition, you're setting that up that everyone else has to pay more because the insurance company knows that they're going to have to pay for someone who has a pre-existing condition. And generally, when I got life insurance, what did they come and do? They took my blood pressure, right, my pulse, and my respirations. And time is up. Thank you.
Brad, you can stay right up there where you were because you get to ask the first question of Jay Clough.
Okay, now this close up. So the main thing is the pre-existing conditions. Life insurance companies can't be set up for failure; they need to be set up for success. Okay, so they can be successful in our nation and provide insurance for our citizens. This part of asking a question is one of the toughest things for me to do. Carol Moser's here today, and I'm really glad that she's here. And we ran against each other twice, and we were given that opportunity. Carol, I just want to say it was tough for me to do it then, and it's tough, Jay, for me to ask the questions to you today, so I want to do that with all respect. So the question is that I have, let's just take the last biennium, because every session that I've been in Washington State, we've been facing a budget deficit. And it is true the last 2 sessions that we were in Olympia. Our Constitution says we need to get our work done in a certain amount of time. We have a democratically led House, Senate, and a governor. And we've had to have 6 special sessions. What's that?
5 seconds.
6 special sessions. Why would one more Democrat make our economy better?
Thank you for that question. That's a good one. I don't know about Democrat or Republican, but having one less person that's in the minority of their own party would be a good start. 19 bills in just the last session where he voted with less than 10 people within his own caucus. Okay, that's why we go into special session. We're not going into special sessions because of moderates. We're going into special sessions because people on both sides of the aisle that are so extreme, they can't come together and pass a simple budget. The last session cost us $300,000 in special sessions. That's not because of people like me. You heard me speak. I'm pretty much right down the line. Does anyone in this room actually think that I'm going to go there and cause us to go into special session? Or do you think I'm the kind of person that will go there and try to pull both sides together by their shirt tails or by their ears and try to get something done for this community. I'm not interested in the party politics. I'm just not. And if that means that I'm welcome to the Republican Party kind of thing, well, so be it. But I want this community to do well. And so, if you want to get things done, you're going to have to get people that are less concerned about ideology and partisan politics, and more interested in problem solving, and that's what I offer. Thank you.
Okay, now we open it up to you, our members. Only Badger Club members may ask questions of our speakers. You'll recognize them by their name badge. And please note that it's possible to become an instant member. As I was telling Jerome earlier, if you have a cash or a check available in your pocket when we call on you. If you're a guest and would like to ask a question and are sitting at a table with a member, you might ask him or her to ask that question for you. We have portable microphones in the audience. Please raise your hands, and I or Johnny there will come to you. Please state your name, and after you do, ask your question. Less than 1 minute for a question.
My name is Kimberly Camp. This question is to Representative Klippert. You talked about creating a business-friendly environment in Washington, yet the examples you gave for how wonderful the state is are projects paid for by the federal government. Hanford wouldn't be there without federal dollars. The dam wouldn't be there without federal dollars. You even talked about your career, and many of those instances you mentioned, you're being paid with government dollars. What will you as a representative do to stop the rhetoric and get on to the real issues of doing what you say you're going to do, and that is looking holistically at the community for what role government, business, citizens, all of them play to advance the state?
Number one, I'll just repeat myself just briefly. It's not government's responsibility to grow our economy. It's government's responsibility to create an environment where in which the private sector can grow our economy, where businesses can grow and prosper and hire more citizens that can grow and prosper. Then when that happens, they fuel our economy, because the number one tax revenue we have in Washington State is sales tax. So when people prosper, they spend more and our economy thrives. So that's number one. How can we help businesses grow and prosper in this state? Regulatory reform. Do you know that since 1978, nearly 20,000 new rules and regulations have been passed in this state by this bureaucracy that our business owners and operators now have to operate under? Ladies and gentlemen, that's a choke point. That's absolutely stifling our businesses, and they come to me on a regular basis and say, Brad, please help. We cannot operate prosperously under all of the regulations that the government puts on us. Help us get some regulatory relief. And that's exactly what I hope to do, because as we get regulatory relief for our businesses across Washington State, they can once again grow and prosper, hire more citizens who can then grow and prosper through family wage jobs. Hopefully I've answered your question.
Hi, my name is Rick Janssens. I'm the chair of the Richmond School Board. I have a question regarding education. Washington State Constitution Article 9 states that the state's paramount duty is to provide public schooling for all of our children and to fully fund that basic education. The Supreme Court, Washington State Supreme Court, agreed 9-0 this last year. It hasn't happened yet. How will you, as a representative, work to fully fund basic education in the state? For both of you.
Who would you like to go first?
I would love to answer this question. I talk about it a lot at doors, and I actually have a little girl now, so I have kind of a reason to get excited about it. Education is something I love. I taught overseas, and I want to make sure that we have the best education possible for our kids. So rhetoric aside, the way that we pay for that is simple. One, we stop cutting it, which is something that my opponent keeps doing, voting to cut education. Stop it. Just stop it. We've cut enough. Second, we have over 481 tax breaks in this state that go primarily to large corporations on the west side. And in the budget deal, neither the Democrats or the Republicans were willing to examine their sacred cows to decide which of these loopholes and tax breaks were creating jobs, which ones were creating economic activities, which if they are doing that, fantastic. In this community, I'm sure there are large corporations that are helping to create jobs and helping our economy grow. That's fantastic. But no one can tell me that out of 481, there aren't some of them that can be sunset, and we can use those monies and earmark them directly to education and shore up the horrible underfunding that we have for our education system in Washington State. We need to start funding education, but it starts with not cutting and starting to look at tax breaks that we're giving that may not be effective in keeping our economy going. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. That's an excellent question. That decision that many of you might know, the McCleary decision by the Washington State Supreme Court, the whole thing is, when that, and I researched this in depth and trying to find the answer, the best answer for your question, because it's a very deep question, obviously, because the legislature has been wrestling with it for quite some time. So they wrote that in our Constitution. Washington became a state November 11th, 1889. And I can't find anyone who tells me that that was written any time after that. So in our original Washington State Constitution, that's when that was written. That primary focus of our government should be to fund education. So you're talking about an education that was, the system that was defined in 1889 is dramatically different now. In fact, we redefined education since I've been in office, and to fully fund that, we realize it's going to take anywhere between $1.5 to $3 billion on top of what we already have in our state budget. So ladies and gentlemen, right now we're facing anywhere between a $1.5 to $2 billion budget deficit when we go back to session in January. And now if you fully fund education, as the McCleary decision says we should, which I don't disagree with, we're going to have to find somewhere between another $1.5 to $3 billion. So now that makes us a budget deficit of between $2 and $5 billion. It's just a matter of finding, and Jay makes some good points, you know, tax breaks. Whose taxes are you going to raise to get that money? And that's, nobody wants to, those businesses that you talk about, they employ people across Washington State. And guess what? You raise their taxes, what are they going to have to do with employees? Say goodbye to some of those employees because they can no longer afford to employ them. That's why we're so hesitant to raise taxes on those corporations, because we want them to stay here in Washington State and continue to employ our citizens.
My name is Nick Geronimo. This question is addressed to Mr. Clough. As you mentioned that you are conservative, being from that fold, do you believe in empowering parents by giving them school choice or a school voucher system to make education better?
I support homeschooling because I think that's a personal choice that parents can make, and I think it's a good one for a lot of students. I've met and I have friends who are homeschooled that do wonderfully in life, and I applaud them. When we're talking about voucher systems, basically what we're talking about is the beginning of a tiered system. We're talking about a voucher that you take money from the general fund for education, and you take that money and you put it in the hands of somebody to go to a private school. Now, statistically, somebody that goes to a private school and does well would have done well in private school because they have parents that care enough to put them into a private school. It's the parents who usually determine whether or not a student gets good grades. I tell you right now, I can't say if I would have graduated high school without my dad. He made me come home every single day and do my homework and extra homework that he gave me. That's the kind of parent that makes sure their kids do well. All voucher systems do is take money out of the public service or public school system and put it to a private school system, which makes public schools less efficient and doesn't really solve the problem. And if you look at the numbers and the statistics, the statistics do not back up the idea that going to a private school automatically increases your school performance. It just doesn't. I know that's a good talking point, but it doesn't. And I support teachers, and I think they're doing a great job. We need to support them more, not pull money out of their system. Thank you.
This question is for both of you. My name is Kevin Jackson. I'm the treasurer for the Badgers. I'm also a small business owner. I checked a couple months ago, and it may have changed since then, but Washington State has the highest minimum wage in the country. I'm telling you right now, what hinders me from hiring new people, because demand is not the issue, I've got plenty of demand, are the taxes and the wages I have to pay. question for both of you are specific to small business and championing that cause. One of you may have alluded to it, but what are your top 2 or 3 agenda items as going back into session to champion small business?
Who would you like to go first?
My fellow Republicans.
2 or 3 items. Number 1 is, we already talked about, business-friendly environment. How much time do I have?
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Wow, this is a great one I'd like to talk about for a long time. Regulatory relief, business-friendly. Here's an example. Ladies and gentlemen, I work as a law enforcement officer. How many of you like to get traffic tickets? For those of you who are watching by television, not a single hand went up. Okay, nobody likes to get them. So if you do not follow the rules and regulations of the state, you can potentially get a fine. I'll give you an example. One of my Republican representatives talks of a major corporation that you would know them if I mentioned their name, over on the west side. They failed to fill out 1 box on a form. And the regulators went to them from Washington State and said, that'll be $14,000 fine. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I've stopped people all the time who have failed to sign the registration form. That's a $124 ticket. You know what I do? I hand them my pen and say, would you like to save $124? Okay, what if that, and you know what that business said to my representative, my fellow representative, when they did that to that business? We're out of here. If that's the way Washington State treats their businesses, we're gone, and they're a major employer. And the other thing I really appreciate what you said about the minimum wage. For a reaction, there's an equal and opposite reaction. There's a fruit packing place in Prosser that's now shut down. And I asked, why? Why are there no more employees here? Well, the minimum wage went up. We used to produce the highest quality apples in the nation. People came from, in the world, people came from all over the world to buy our apples. Now, because we can't afford to hire the employees we need to make those high quality apples, our quality's gone down, our buyers have gone away, and all those people who used to have the highest minimum wage in the nation now have no wage. Thank you for the question.
First, I'd like to disagree that we don't have the best apples in the world. I've traveled the world, lived in other countries, and those apples are available everywhere, and everyone loves Washington apples. So that's not true from personal experience. First off, what was your name, sir? Mr. Jackson. And what kind of business do you run?
Tax and business consultant.
Okay. So what I said before, I stand by, which is that we need to make regulation, 1, easier to follow. We don't go into business. My dad's a small business, well, he was a small business owner of a couple of businesses before he retired. My mother's a small business owner. That was what our family did. We ran businesses. If you remember Alternate Channels Video, that's the guy right there. If you remember Maloney Homes, that's the guy right there. Nail Biz, any of you ladies have your nails in a nail biz, that's my mom. So small businesses, I am very sympathetic with the challenges that small businesses face. For the best thing that I can do for you is, 1, lower your regulatory hurdles. And that means making it, 1, easier for you to follow the rules and not jumping on you, like he said, about 1 little box. Okay? Making maybe a computer system that makes it so that you can do all of your regulatory hurdles in an hour instead of 40 hours, and keeping you off of doing the thing that you love. Lower taxes for small businesses is something I'm in favor of, specifically the B&O tax. Lowering the business and occupation tax, which only 19 states have, and it's an incredibly regressive tax for our small businesses. Getting that lowered, and not just making a hole in our budget, but using some of that 481 tax breaks for the larger corporations to pay for small business. Okay, I don't hate business, I love business. I want this community to grow. I want more businesses to come here. And you don't do that by scaring them away with what you're talking about. So as far as the minimum wage goes, I support our minimum wage. I want to see people making a living wage so that they can go and buy more of your goods. And they need to have a wage to do that. That helps the economy overall. So I'm not in favor of lowering the minimum wage.
Jim Farmer, I have a 2-pronged question, if you will, and Jay, you can answer this first. Number 1, the majority of the population lives on the west side, and the vast majority of the representation is on the west side. Okay, number 1, what makes either one of you think you can change that representation, because it does not reflect this side of the state? And number 2, do you ever see Washington State going back to the ballot instead of the mail-in vote?
First off, I don't think we'll ever go back to a ballot or to going into a ballot booth because it increases voter turnout when you have it by mail. Although I would like to. I drove through the snow for 2 hours to get to a ballot location so that I could punch my vote maybe a decade ago. So I agree. It's a civic thing that we get together and we get to do every 4 years or every 2 years. Now, as far as what I think I can do in Olympia, here's the reality. Right now, Democrats control Olympia. Okay? They would really like me to get elected. And so I'm going to be able to go there and get things done for this community because they want to make sure I get reelected. Now, they're willing to accept me because my party has a big tent. And they're willing to accept a conservative Democrat. And so my major goal is to get some specific projects done here in this community to increase our economic power in the state. With economic power comes political power. We need to grow Eastern Washington. This community specifically is in a perfect situation to grow and to become a powerhouse for technology, for industry, manufacturing, for the high-tech industry. We need to foster these businesses and these sectors so that we can build up our economic power, and as that happens, we'll have more political power. But we're not going to do it by electing folks that don't have any power within their own party. I will have automatically on day one some tokens to work with on the west side because they want to get me reelected. That's just the cynical fact of the matter. And just like Bill Grant did in Walla Walla, he was able to do great things for Walla Walla, and he was a conservative Democrat too. And I aspire to be like him, somebody that can bring home projects that build this community economically so that we build up our economic power and in turn build up our political power.
I'm anxious to see who the real Badger is who gets the Badger Award today. That was a pretty good question, so maybe he'll get the Badger Award. Actually, it was the answer that I liked the most. The ballot box. A whole lot of people would really like to see us be able to go back to the ballot box and actually go in and flip the switches and mark your ballot. I love listening to one of the stations I love listening to is K1A Radio, 610 Information, and I listen to Michael McDonald tell all the time on the radio how he misses the ballot box too. So I support those people. I like going to the ballots. It's fun. It's a part of Americana. Changing the east-west thing, well, I'll tell you what I do when I get over there. I remind them that there is an eastern Washington, because a lot of the people from the west side, when you talk about the east side, they think about Lake Sammamish, Lake Washington, and Bellevue. Okay? The east side, I tell them, no, you don't understand. There's an eastern Washington on the east side of the Cascades, okay? And here are the issues that we have, and the things we believe in, the things we stand for, and the things we need to get done. And then how do I combat the number problem? I work with them. You know, it's really surprising. Multiple times on the House floor and in committee, I've had Democrats say, you know, it's really surprising that I have worked with Representative Klippert to get this legislation through because I'm known as one of the most conservative Republicans there. And I actually have very, if I can use the word, liberal Democrats who will specifically come to me and say, Brad, will you co-sponsor this bill with me because I would love to have a bill with, I won't mention that person's name, and Brad Klippert right next to it because they know if they get Brad Klippert's name on there, they have got total bipartisan support. Okay? So anyway, I work with them and I treat them with respect and dignity, and that's how we get things done over there, and that's why I've worked with several Democrats to get several pieces of legislation passed in Washington State that is good for the citizens of the state.
We're going to try to fit in two questions, very short questions and very short answers.
Yeah.
Okay, my name is Ed Frost, and my question to both of you is, the Affordable Health Care Act, as interpreted by the Supreme Court, allows the state of Washington an option of including more impoverished people to be covered by Medicaid for their health care. Initially, this additional group of Medicaid recipients would be paid for by the federal government, and ultimately the state of Washington could have to pay up to only 10% of the cost. Will you support the addition of the additional Medicaid recipients in the state of Washington? And if you will not, would you explain how those people might go about getting medical coverage? Both of you.
Sure. The fact of the matter is that with the Affordable Care Act, we're going to add about 400,000 people to Medicaid in the state. and that is a large number of people, representing a large dollar amount. The federal government will pick that up for 2 years, and like he said, they'll pick up the vast majority of it after that. Here's my feelings on it. It's going to be challenging, it is. But is it the right thing to do? Making sure that people that are impoverished, young children, the elderly, have access to health care that will make our citizens more productive, help them to live longer lives, and healthier and happier lives. It may be challenging, but I think that if we start investing in our communities like I'm talking about, the tax revenue will increase because we'll have more businesses, we'll have more population. And with that, we'll have the ability to cover that 10% that's left over. I don't think we should allow the idea that they don't deserve it interfere with those that need it. So I will support that, and I will work as hard as I can to make sure that this community has a growing business sector so that they can help, and the state can grow to help pay for the additional 10% of what it was.
Great question, and this is not a question you can answer quickly, but I'll do my best. I could spend 5 or 10 minutes just on this one question alone. Let's just go to the roots of your question. I absolutely, positively, well, I'm going to ask you a question. What is our national debt right now?
$16 trillion.
$16 trillion. And if the Affordable Care Act goes into full implementation, it'll increase our national debt by how much? About another $1 trillion. So immediately we go up to $17 trillion indebtedness in this nation. Can we afford that? No, we cannot. If I were elected to a U.S. House of Representatives position, I would vote to repeal the Affordable Care Act, and I do not support it in any way, shape, or form. What's the answer for those people that suggest we should pay more government dollars or more of your tax dollars for Medicaid? We need to allow us to shop Washington citizens to shop across state lines to get affordable private health care, and we need to quit mandating the regulations on health care of those providers that can provide health care in Washington State, so more health care providers, private health care providers can come to Washington State and offer affordable health care to anyone in Washington State that wants it or needs it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Gary Troyer. A couple of years ago, the American Nuclear Society visited the legislature. We talked to John McCoy. He subsequently got on the House floor and said that we need to have a nuclear energy policy for the state of Washington. How would you go about accomplishing that? And what might be the things that you would put into it that would enhance the resources we have in the Tri-Cities? Both of you.
I actually work in the industry. I understand the science, so I'm a very good advocate for this, for the industry. I've spent a lot of time in Western Washington beating my head against a wall with liberals over there that don't understand nuclear power. They think we're still creating weapons over here. And so the first thing is to have somebody over there that is respected and in the field, and that's me, and can explain the issues to those that don't have the information. Again, that's me. Now, I'm a big supporter of the industry. I support the modular that they're talking about, and I support a growing nuclear sector, not shrinking it. So the first thing we can do to support the industry is having advocates and ambassadors in the West Side that can explain the issues, and I will be a tireless advocate for the nuclear industry.
Just real quick, because our moderator has now stepped to the microphone, so our time is short. I totally and completely support nuclear energy in Washington State, especially in the Tri-Cities area. I helped build the Energy Northwest nuclear reactor out there. That's how I put myself through college. I was working construction out there. I worked in the nuclear industry, 100N, when it was an operating reactor during charge, discharge. So I've also worked in the field all across Hanford. And I don't believe, people ask me, well, what are you going to do about a post-Hanford economy? Post-Hanford economy? I'm talking about future Hanford economy. That's what I'm working towards today, and I will in the future work for a future Hanford economy which will be rich in nuclear energy. Thank you very much.
Please join me in thanking We have a little something to have you remember your time with us today. Maybe put your favorite beverage on. The next Badger Forum will be on September 28th at the Kennewick Red Lion, when our program will be